What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. It is episode 3 of Fearless Football Forecast. Claw and Jake Hurd are here. What's good?
Nothing much, brother. I'm excited to get into the division of our two favorite teams, our rival teams, the NFC today.
Yes, sir. We got the entire NFC breakdown, including each division. We're going to talk about our risers, our fallers. We're going to break down 2 divisions specifically today. We're going to go further into depth in those in a later episode. We're also going to be ranking the top 5 quarterbacks in the division. And at the end, we're going to give our division winner predictions. It's going to be a spicy episode. You know, we did the AFC last week. Definitely go check that out before you listen to this podcast. And the AFC was so entertaining, so exciting because there's so much positive stuff going on. Whereas today's episode might be a little bit more negative, which sometimes negativity is a lot more fun. So I'll let you get into it with your first riser before we get to the bad stuff.
All right, so my biggest riser this offseason is going to be the Chicago Bears, and it's for a couple of reasons in particular. If you listened to, we put a video out a couple weeks ago about 5 biggest offseason moves. We had DJ Moore on there, and that's the first thing I want to talk about. Getting DJ Moore on this team gives Justin Fields a true number one receiver, which obviously helps out all the auxiliary pieces. And, you know, maybe we'll see how you feel and I feel about Fields a little bit later when we talk about our quarterback rankings. But if you think he's legit, getting him a true number one receiver is going to help him out a ton. I also thought they had a sneaky, well, I don't know if it was sneaky. I think most people like it, but I thought they had a pretty good draft. Darnell Wright, the tackle out of Tennessee, I was actually a really big fan of. He ended up going earlier than people thought, but I mean, he was a really, really good tackle. So I'm really excited for him. Tyreek Stevenson, the corner out of Miami, I feel like he always finds a way to be, if not near the ball, just tight coverage, solid athlete, not special, but good enough athlete. Your boy, Gervin Dexter, I feel like he's a big disruptor up the middle. And obviously, we both are really big fans of Roshan. Um, I think that if it wasn't for Bijan Robinson, that Roshan would have been talked about. If he had his own backfield, he'd been talked about as the second or third running back in this draft class. I mean, the guy's an absolute animal. And I really actually liked one other guy they took just kind of as like a swing for the fences, Noah Sewell. Before this past season, if you looked at like way too early mock drafts people were putting out, Noah Sewell was a first round pick in basically everyone of notoriety's mock drafts. So I think that obviously he had a bad year last year, but it's worth taking a shot on that type of talent. So I'm just really excited with the draft that they had, and obviously I'm a huge DJ Moore fan. I think he's a legit number one receiver. I think that they're going to be extremely competitive in the NFC North this year.
Yeah, I love the Bears. I'm personally a big Justin Fields fan, both in real life and in fantasy. He won me the one championship last year. Justin Fields was incredible. And I was watching a lot of his tape this entire week since I knew we were going to break down the NFC. You would have thought that people would be talking about him much more than they actually are. His evasiveness is incredible. His pocket presence is actually better than most people actually give him credit for, even though the Bears O-line has been such an issue. So he's rarely in the pocket actually settled in. He's usually running around. But Fields' awareness is great. Yes, he did have very low passing statistics, but they brought in Chase Claypool last year, very late in the season. So he never really got to adjust with Fields. And then now they bring in DJ Moore, getting an effective running back like Roshan Johnson, bringing in David Montgomery. I think the Bears are going to be a solid team.
They don't have David Montgomery.
Yeah, they got rid of him, right? That was the Lions.
Yeah.
I'll just pause that part. Who else did they bring in at running back though?
Just
no, they just have Khalil Herbert
and Donta Foreman.
Okay, all right. Bringing in Donta Foreman at running back, just able to punch in those little goal line carries. It should be a high-powered offense this year. I also like the Darnell Wright pick a lot. I think he it was a position of need for them. And then, like you said, like with Dexter, with Roshan, both very great value picks. The Bears, it's going to be a competitive division. We'll talk about that later and how competitive the division is, but I definitely see them being a riser, considering not many people would have thought that they were going to be that good this year. My riser is going to be the New Orleans Saints. And if you've watched this channel for the last couple weeks, you know that we absolutely love the Saints. And I've talked about the Saints so much at this point, so I'm not going to bore you by reiterating everything else that I've already said, other than the fact that Derek Carr is there now. His impact is going to be huge, considering that they had an old Drew Brees, Andy Dalton, Teddy Bridgewater. They haven't really had a standout quarterback in the last couple of years. Derek Carr also has never really had a good defense, not even an average defense. Derek Carr has never played with a top 20 defense before. Last year, the Saints ranked 4th, and that was with them being on the field the whole time. So we really don't know the true potential of the Saints defense with a better offense. You combine one of the best deep ball throwers with Carr, with Chris Olave, who I know you're very high on as well. Olave is an incredible talent. He had a great year last year, especially considering who was passing him the ball. If it wasn't Andy Dalton and random backup quarterbacks, then Olave might have had a serious breakout season, but I'm expecting one this year. You have Alvin Kamara. Once he comes back from his suspension, they did a great job. Personally, I love the Jamal Williams signing. I think that was great. I think that gives the Saints pretty much what they had when it was a combination between Mark Ingram and Kamara. And if you look back, that's when their offense was working the best. Michael Thomas may or may not be healthy this year. I think that they got a player in the draft very late, A.T. Perry, who, kind of has a lot of the same intangibles as Michael Thomas, can be used as that X receiver, can just come in with some some slants, do the Michael Thomas specialty.
Slant boy.
It is, at the end of the day, it's just such an easy division. Now that Tom Brady left the Bucs, you have a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. And as much as I like Young, the game that they actually play Young in Carolina is the second week of the season. So he probably won't be as settled in. And we don't even know the QB play or the QB situation with the Bucs. I personally think it'll be Kyle Trask. I know you probably think it's going to be Baker. It could end up being neither of those guys, and they sign a random free agent by that point. Derek Carr is going to be going from, competing in these shootouts like you've seen the last couple of years with Patrick Mahomes, with Justin Herbert. And I think Carr gets blamed a lot, the last couple of years for his defensive efficiencies and maybe just some turnovers in big moments. But at the end of the day, he's battled against some of the top quarterbacks in the AFC for quite some time. And now he's going to have some pretty easy QB battles. And I mean, like how you mentioned with Fields earlier, we're going to talk about Carr later again in the top 5 quarterbacks. So I just think that Carr is just going to be such a difference maker for this team, possible MVP candidate, just based on how many wins the Saints are going to get with this easy division. I'm huge on the Saints this year, considering they still had a decent amount of wins last year with no QB talent, great defense, great up front, and they always just somehow replace it. I mean, they got 2 great D linemen in the draft this year. So, yeah, I just don't see a world where the Saints don't win that division.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, we've talked about the Saints a couple of times already, but when you're going from the bottom of the barrel at quarterback to a guy like Derek Carr, who is just as consistent as you can be, like you said, I feel like he falls under. We've said it before. I think he gets a lot of scrutiny just because no playoff success. He only made the playoffs one time, and he didn't even get to play because he was hurt. And then I feel like a couple big moments here and there, he hasn't looked great. So it's like, everyone's like, oh, he's one of these guys who shies away from the big moment. But like you said, I think that his impact is going to be huge. I think that they're going to be amazing. I love Olave. That defense is great. And like you said, it's just the division is so bad around them. Like you said, I like Young. He's a rookie. The Falcons are actually, they might be competitive, but Ritter is their quarterback. Like you said, I do think Baker's going to start, but I mean, we've seen what 6 years of Baker already, and he's just not what people thought he was going to be. Um, so I think that this is their division to walk away with. And we're getting into the fallers now. My faller is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. And we're going to get into a deeper dive of this division later. But for me, their losses were big losses. They didn't have a ton of losses, but the ones they did have were huge. Zadarius Smith is one of those guys who is an extremely consistent defensive lineman, and he's a leader. Um, his contribution, he had, he was hurt a couple years ago, but last year, 10 plus sacks. When he's on the field, he produces. And when you look at the rest of that defense, there's really no one there to, I mean, Harrison Smith is a leader. I feel like his play isn't like when you have a leader, there's two aspects of it, the personality and the play. Harrison Smith is still a good safety. He's above average, but he's not as good as he used to be. He's just getting up there in age. Zadarius Smith, I felt like, was that guy who had the leader personality, but also could demand the respect of other players because he was just that good. Obviously, they recently cut Dalvin Cook, which hurts the run game. Obviously, they're a pass-first team, but to be quite honest, their passing is the only thing that I feel confident in this year, which is, it is the most important thing on offense is being able to pass the ball. But you see it all the time. When you can't run the ball, there's a difference between being great at passing and still having a run game. Let's like the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they have Mahomes. They're a pass-first team, but Pacheco is good enough to get 4-yard chunks here and there. You know what I mean? I'm not convinced. I think it's going to be running back by committee. I don't think the offensive line is good enough to carry the load for the running backs. And I think that their offense is just going to be pass, pass, pass. And then the other big thing is right now, Danielle Hunter, or Danielle Hunter, however you pronounce his name, he is like holding out or holding in. And he's not going to play unless he gets a new contract. And they've already said that the Vikings are willing to trade him. So if they trade him, that defense is going to be horrible. You think about it, they're one of those teams, everyone hears the statistics, one-score games. They were so good in those one-score games. I mentioned it on with a team last week on the AFC podcast. If it flips this year, which it usually does, usually it's even, but 1 year you have a great year, 1 year you have a bad year. They had a phenomenal year. Every game was within 7 points, it felt like. And I just don't see them having the same success in these close games because I think that the defense is going to get completely taken advantage of. And really the biggest thing, and like we said, we're going to talk about the division later. I just think the division got so much better, which we'll get more into that later. But I just don't see a world where the Vikings are going to be able to win the division this year.
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny. The Vikings have pretty much been in Green Bay's shadow for the last 4 years. And then the year that Aaron Rodgers leaves and it opens up the division, you would have thought that the Vikings would have done everything possible in free agency to ensure that they were the best team, where instead they kind of did the opposite. You know what I mean? Like this was their year. This was their shot to not only win the division, but to do it in a dominant fashion. And instead they just kind of blew it. There weren't many new signings. I personally don't like Addison that much. Out of all the first-round wide receivers, I think he's the worst. They got rid of Adam Thielen. The impact that Dalvin Cook had was actually pretty huge, especially in those one-score games, like you said. Actually, like 4 of them were Dalvin Cook touchdowns, including the one giant run when they did make that comeback against the Colts. So, I mean, Dalvin Cook pays dividends. This team is someone who really likes Justin Jefferson. They're going to have to pass. So Jefferson's going to get peppered. I don't know if Addison can be a true 2 right away. I think he'll take some time. I think he's really a shot in the dark at this point, personally. So I still think KJ Osborne will be the number 2 guy there. TJ Hawkinson should have a good season. Like you said, getting rid of Zadarius Smith, you saw the impact that had on the Packers defense. Now might have the same. And without Danielle Hunter, who's been their really go-to guy on that side of the ball, if he doesn't actually show up or they somehow end up losing him in some way, shape, or form, that D-line is going to be really, really hurting. And they weren't that great against the run last year anyway. So if you take out Zadarius Smith, you take out Danielle Hunter, I don't see good things going on for this Vikings team. I mean, we could segue right into it, but I have my faller first. But we'll talk about it again, just about how good 2 of the teams are now in the NFC North. So my faller is going to be the New York Giants. I am still baffled at the fact that Daniel Jones was paid. The narrative around Daniel Jones the last couple years was, why the hell are the Giants still keeping him? If it was any other franchise, he would not be still on the team. That was the narrative the whole last couple years. He's been horrendous his entire career. Most turnovers by a quarterback in his time since entering the league. His highest QBR before this season was 47. And even this year, he didn't have a phenomenal year. He was still had a QBR of 60. He still had some turnovers. All he added really to his game, and this was just from the O-line getting better, was a little bit more rushing ability. I just don't see them making the playoffs again. I don't think they beat the Cowboys. I don't think they beat the Eagles. I kind of like what the Commanders did in the offseason with their front office, with their coaching staff, and with their talent. And honestly, I can see the Giants going from 3rd and making the playoffs to 4th and not making the playoffs at all. They finished 9-7-1, despite being the 4th lowest graded team in the NFL overall with Pro Football Focus. They're really reliant on the running game, and their back 7 on defense just has a lot of question marks. I mean, their linebackers were the 4th worst, and their safeties were the 2nd worst last year. They didn't go out and get a number 1 wide receiver this year. The Giants were just cheap again and got Jamison Crowder and Paris Campbell. I don't necessarily like who they drafted either with Jalen Hyatt. I don't think he's that good. The only thing that I do like that they did this offseason was the Darren Waller trade. I think that he's going to be a really high impact tight end. But I don't think that the tight end play, as much as it's going to be good for him statistically and good for fantasy, I don't think that it's impactful enough to swing this offense into a more high-powered situation. They really didn't do anything whatsoever to address the issues in their back part of their defense. They didn't have any big free agent signings this year. And like I said, Daniel Jones was just repaid. So not only is this a faller for this season, but I don't know what the hell they did. I like their young players. I like Thibodeau a lot. I thought he did great the second half of the year. A lot of people were giving him crap earlier on in the season, but then he evolved. Love Saquon. But this Giants team is just a mess that just got lucky last year, gelled together. We're a tough team, but Daniel Jones just hasn't showed it up to this point. I'll take the 5 years that he was bad over the 1 year that he was somewhat decent as my sample size. I don't know if you agree with the Giants being this bad, but I don't know. I just think multiple playoff teams will make it from the NFC North. Could see 2 making it from the NFC West. And God knows if the Falcons, I could see the Falcons being a better team than the Giants and possibly squeaking in for that final playoff spot. But
Yeah, so like you said, the best thing that they did this offseason was Darren Waller. I love that signing. I think that he personally is going to have a great season. I love Brian Daboll. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great offensive mind. So I think that the offense can be good again. But as of right now, Saquon Barkley is holding out. He said he has that July deadline because he won't sign the franchise tag, and he's going to go from there. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, I think that at the end of the day, he's going to end up playing for them. But even if he does, I think the offense is going to be good enough. But like you said, the defense, I like their defensive line.
I do
Um,
too.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that their defense last year was one of those defenses, and you see it every year. It's a defense that's not good, but they just make big plays. Like, you go right down the field on them, but they always find a way to make a stop in the red zone. They always get a big sack when they need it. They always get a turnover. And that's just something that, without the talent, that's not going to come consistently. Defense is so wild year over year. Um, and I think that they just made big plays in big moments last year, and I think that that's going to come down. And I think that that's really going to hurt the Giants. Like you said, the Commanders will get more into that division later too. Um, I like what they did this year as well. Um, but I agree. I think that they're really the main thing with me. The reason they're falling is the receivers are and I don't think their defense is going to be able to make as many big plays as they did last year.
Yeah, we might as well get into it now with the NFC East. I'll just start off at the top left, just saying that, you know, Dallas this year, I really like what they did in the offseason. Getting Stephon Gilmore, I think, is going to be something that wasn't talked about enough. That is going to have a huge impact and also take a lot off of Trayvon Diggs, especially in man situations, whereas Diggs is going to always work better as a zone corner. Um, I love that signing. I think that Brandon Cooks is going to help Dak out a lot and elevate him because Gallup is still there and Cooks can provide stretching the field, which should allow CD to be a lot more open underneath. I think this will be the best season of CD's career. The main reason why I'm not as high on the Cowboys this year, I just don't like that they didn't really do much to address their O-line. They're really just banking on the older talent being healthy, which they haven't been for the last 2 seasons. Tyron Smith has not played a full season in about 5 years. Just up front, they're getting beat up nonstop. They didn't address that at the draft at all, really. They drafted a tight end pretty high, which I wasn't expecting. Maybe they're going to use him, but at the end of the day, he's not really Schoonmaker isn't really a good pass protector. He's a good run blocker. I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't a RB drafted. I'm personally, as a Cowboys fan, I'm not a fan at all of Tony Pollard. I think that he's a good number 2. I don't think he can carry the load you saw in games similar. When he did actually get the full load and was a 3-down back, he was absolutely exhausted by the third quarter. The only game that really happened last year was the Detroit Lions game, and it ended up being an extremely close game. He was saying on the sideline that he was exhausted. I don't really know if we're going to sign Zeke again. I didn't want it to be Zeke. I wanted it to be someone else. Personally, at this time of recording, we're pre-recording. So we don't know where Dalvin Cook ends up. I'm praying that Dalvin Cook makes it to the Cowboys. But as far as the defense goes, I think that that's going to be, once again, incredible. Our defense last year was amazing. Micah Parsons, probably the best defensive player in the year, best defensive player in the league. Like I just mentioned, the secondary is great. Dan Quinn is phenomenal. I see the Cowboys doing well, but I'm just going to put it out there right now. I don't think that they win the division. I think that the Eagles are undeniably the best team in the NFC right now, and their draft should not have been allowed. Like, the league clearly should have stepped in and just been like, yo, you guys are too good already. What the hell are you doing? The only world that the Eagles don't win the division this year or even win the NFC is if Jalen Hurts gets injured, I think. I mean, you can talk about what they added, but they added some talent. They added some talent in the draft.
Yeah. So just to speak on the Cowboys for a second, like you said, I actually think that I think you could have considered them a riser. And the thing with risers
How
and
can you
fallers is
rise? How can they rise?
exactly.
They had the second best record in the NFC last year. Unless they're
Well,
the first, then they can't be a riser.
well, exactly. But I think their roster got better. I think Gilmore was a really big signing. I think Cooks was, or did they trade for Gilmore? They signed him, right?
Yeah, they signed.
Yeah. They signed Gilmore, that trade for Cooks. I think were both really, really big moves. I think that the division is going to be more competitive this year. I do think that the Eagles will end up winning the division. Um, like you said, one of the big reasons is in the trenches. We're just so good on both sides. And like you said, past couple of years, your guys, it's been hard for your offensive line to hold up. But I do think that I think it's going to be a situation again this year in the NFC. Eagles, Niners, Cowboys are the three best teams. I think the Eagles are going to win the division, but I think the Cowboys, the Cowboys fans are going to be like, oh, how come, we can't get a home game when we're 13 or we have 12 or 13 wins? I think it's going to be that type of situation again. The Cowboys are a really good team. But to get into the Eagles, who, like I said, I think they're the best team in the NFC as well. We'll get into the Hurts in a little bit. Guy's an absolute animal. I love him to death. And we did lose some pieces, Hargrave, linebackers. We lost Edwards and Kazir White. We lost Chauncey. Chauncey hurt. I'm not going to lie, that one hurt.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah. But the big thing is we did end up retaining Bradbury, which I would have rather had Chauncey than Bradbury, but like we've all heard I think Chauncey thought that he was worth more than he was, and we made an offer. And the thing about Howie is he's always ebbing and flowing. When something comes to him that he sees as a value, he does it. He goes down every avenue to see if there's a way to work something out. And when Chauncey said no originally, was he supposed to sit on his hands and knees and wait for him to come back? No. I mean, either we lose them or we have a chance to get Chauncey back or we bring Bradbury back. So I'm happy we brought back Bradbury back for the cornerback room. But obviously the biggest thing, the pieces that are still there, Kelsey didn't retire, and the draft. I thought that the Eagles won the draft by far, and I really do try to take my bias out of things with situations like this. And I really think that in this situation I am. Jalen Carter was considered by how many people was he the number one talent on their board? Half of the community. He was the number one player on the board. Going into the draft, I said at 10, I want him because they were talking about him falling. And if we don't, I want to trade back and either get, a Joey Porter or a Nolan Smith. Well, guess what? We got both of them. I think Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick has shown that smaller guys can win in the NFL. I think Nolan Smith, and if you listen to him, he has that dog in him. And we have such a great culture. That's what doesn't worry me about Jalen Carter. I know people say he has off the field issues. Half of his Georgia team is there. All of his buddies are there. And one of the things that went about Jalen Hurts, why I love him so much, is that he's the leader of leaders. I think if I had to choose one player to lead a team, he's in the top 5 leaders in the NFL, in my opinion, personally. He just is determined no matter what. But yeah, Jalen Carter fills in for Hargrave nicely. I think Jordan Davis got hurt last year. He was great before he got hurt. He didn't get as much playing time when he came back, but I think they're going to be great this year. We have depth at the position as well. Graham, Sweat, Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick, our edge rushing prowess, the amount we can switch people in and out, Fletcher Cox, obviously on the inside. We lost the linebackers, but I talked about Nakobe Dean already. I love Nakobe Dean. I think he's going to be considered one of the best linebackers in the NFL after this year. And then after the first round picks, we did what we always do. We add the offensive line, Steen. We're not really sure what's going on. I think that's going to be a camp battle. I think they're either going to start him at right guard. That's what they're saying. It's either going to be him and Juergens. Personally, I have no dog in that fight because if we start him at guard, that's fine. Juergens can just be ready for backup duties in the middle. If we start Juergens, which they say he doesn't play it, he's a natural center. I think that we could use Steen as a swing tackle. And then Sidney Brown, I didn't know much about before the draft, but I've heard nothing but good things from draft analysts. I'm excited to see how he plays in our defense. And Kelly Ringo is one of those guys who's got all the talent in the world. He takes plays off. But like I said, I think that with our culture, that taking plays off is something that's not going to be allowed. Darius Slay will say something to him. Fletcher's going to say something to him. Jalen's going to say something to him. And it's going to go one of two ways. But I think it's going to go in the positive way because we're going to be such a winning team. I think that, like you said, I think the Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl. And I don't think I'm biased. I hope I'm not. I just think that we're an extremely dominant team.
And they got DeAndre Swift for free for a
Yeah, I
bag
didn't
of
even talk
donuts.
about Swift.
They
Sorry, I
upgraded
didn't
at
even talk
running
about
back.
Swift.
They upgraded massively at running back, and
Swift and Penny.
Miles
I like
Sanders
both
had
of them.
11. Yeah, no. Rashad Penny
your
can also be great too.
Penny's your thunder. Swift is your lightning. Scott is your giant killer. And I personally love Kenny Gainwell. I think that he's just an all-around good player. I'm
There's
so
not
excited
much
for the
that they
Eagles this year.
did. There's not much that they did to lose anything. I mean, everyone that was lost was pretty much replaced.
Yeah,
Like
Hargrave was the biggest loss. Hargrave and Chauncey.
pretty much, yeah. If the linebackers, I mean, we both like him a lot, but if he can't step up, then that'll be a little bit of a hole, but not enough because the secondary is so good that if they do break past that second level, they can be stopped. Yeah, I unless there's a massive injury, and even then, I mean, who do you have? Gardner Minshew. I mean, he's probably the best backup in the league. So you have a starter. He's gone. Where'd Minshew go?
He went to the Colts.
Oh, wow. So who's the backup now?
So Marcus Mariota is the backup now, which I
Great.
like
Another starter who
was even better.
To come to the Eagles. Damn. Actually,
and it's the same play
that's
style.
Really good. Yeah, very good play. Yeah. No, Mariota can be efficient in that offense without a doubt.
Exactly. Run. Throw it up to AJ. Throw it up to Devonta. I'm so fucking excited for the Eagles this year.
Yeah, they're going to be pretty hard to watch. I mean, I'm sure the Cowboys are going to beat them once, as they always do. They usually split. And I mean, last year, one of the wins that the Eagles had over the Cowboys was without Dak there. And honestly, I think without Kellen Moore there, who kind of pushes Dak to do too much, maybe if Dak gets a little bit more conservative, goes back to the play action game, he can be more efficient, similar to how he was his first 3 years in the league. But I mean, the Eagles just have so much talent. It's really hard to deny. And a team that didn't really bring in much talent this year, but changed up a lot of things with their coaching staff, is the Commanders. Bringing in Bieniemy from the Chiefs, I think, is really going to elevate this offense. They clearly see something in Sam Howell that not a lot of us are seeing. I personally liked Howell coming out of college. They got rid of Taylor Heineke, brought in Jacoby Brissett. So it's going to be a battle between Brissett and Howell. I think the Commanders have to roll with their future here. They have to roll with Howell and actually see if he's worth it. I think that the passing game is going to be very elevated this year. Terry McLaurin, I think, is poised to have a great season. Just if you look at the splits between passing and rushing with Bieniemy's offense, yes, they do have Patrick Mahomes, but even if you discount for that, they should start passing the ball a lot more. I think Brian Robinson had a solid rookie season, but I think this is the year that Antonio Gibson really shines. Next week when we talk about our fantasy sleepers and values, I think Gibson's definitely up there. He's going to catch a hell of a lot of passes this year. I like the Commanders. They still haven't gotten rid of Chase Young, which shows that maybe they are committed and possibly thinking about making a playoff push this year. I just mentioned that I think the Giants are going to get worse. The Commanders were also plagued with injury last year. Pretty much every star on their defensive line, and that's one hell of a defensive line, got injured. So what is your take on the Commanders this year?
Yeah, I like the Commanders a lot this year, actually. I think they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot because, there's conclaves in the divisions of talent. This division is going to get beat up. The NFC North is going to be, really competitive. But like you said, I actually like Hal. I think give him a shot. If he sucks, hopefully you get a top pick and you can draft one of the guys coming out next year. But I actually think he's going to be solid. They just have really good weapons. I like Robinson and Gibson as a 1-2 duo. I like their receiving core. Obviously, I think McLaurin is a true number one. I like Doxson a lot. I mean, in the time when he wasn't injured, he was really, really good last year. And Curtis Samuel he's really a versatile receiver as well. And then that defensive line is just so nasty. Like I think that's what's crazy about this division is like every defensive line is really, really good.
Is really
Like,
good.
yeah,
Really
like
good.
yeah, like as a division off the top of my head, I think we have the best defensive line in the league. I'm trying to think.
I wouldn't even,
We
no,
did,
you can't even compare it, honestly, because
yeah,
just the Cowboys and Eagles are two of the top three. So
yeah,
that would be, yeah.
yeah. I'm
And
excited. I
and the
think that
Commanders, when healthy, they're right up there.
right. Well, that's the thing. If Young actually plays to his talent this year, it's going to be scary because Sweat, Payne, and John Allen are all amazing. So if Young actually can stay on the field and play like he was drafted to play, it's going to be disgusting. I think that they're going to be an extremely competitive team in every game.
And
Um,
the Giants, we already touched on a little bit. So should we just move right into the NFC North?
yeah, I think that they're going to land at 4. So
Yeah. And moving on to the NFC North, I know you are higher on one team in this division. I would say I'm high on two. We already talked to an extent about the Vikings, so we're just going to skip over them. We talked about the Bears. There's not much that I would want to add on the Bears other than, well, I'll actually probably say that a little bit later in the show. Do you have anything else to add on the Bears before we get to Green Bay?
no, I think that, like I said, I think that DJ Moore is going to open up the field, and I think that their offense is going to be really good. The only concern with them is going to be their defense, if they can step up or not.
Yeah, I personally have them as number two in the division. I know you're a lot more high on the next team that we're about to talk about, which is the Green Bay Packers. I'm I'm personally not a fan. I think I don't know what's going to go on with Jordan Love. This is one of those situations where he's either going to be great or horrible. I don't know a world where he's serviceable, but you never know. He's been sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. In the games that he has played, I've never really seen anything from him. I personally don't think that Christian Watson's that good. I like Romeo Dobbs. I don't think he's great. Their defense was pretty beat up last year. They didn't add anyone really this year. I didn't like their draft overall. I don't see the Packers in a situation where they want to compete. If I were them, I would just go for the total rebuild route. But you never know. I mean, right now the win total is buyable if you're a believer and very easy to sell on if you are against them. At the lines at like 7.5 right now, I would personally take the under in that situation because of how good the other teams are. And even though I think that the Vikings are a faller, I still think they'll kick the crap out of Green Bay. I can see Green Bay being the worst team in this division. We'll talk a little bit about the Lions next. I absolutely love their culture. I love their locker room. I love their roster. I love their coach. Not much I really like from Green Bay.
Yeah, so personally, I do like Green Bay. I think, Jordan Love, he didn't get too many chances to play, but one of the times he did play was against the Eagles, and I was watching that game. And he wasn't great for the first half, but at the end of the game, he was kind of tearing us up. Um, and, during the regular season, we didn't play a ton of great teams, but we were one of the better defenses in the NFL. And, he was really kind of slinging it down the field. I think one of the biggest things with that as well is I think I'm a lot higher on Christian Watson than you are. Would I want him as my number one receiver? Not necessarily, but I think that he has the talent and ability to do that. When you think about his season last year, he had a really productive season considering he was a rookie coming from a small school in North Dakota, and he was injured to start the year, and I think he was injured for a couple games in the middle of the year. Um, and what I did like about their draft is Watson, while coming into this year you can't rely on him as a true number one. Um, they addressed tight end and receiver a lot to where I think that they have like a good core. You know what I mean? Like not one guy that's amazing, but Watson, Jaden Reed, I think is going to be solid as a rookie. They still have Dobbs. I really like Luke Musgrave. He's extremely athletic, and Tucker Kraft. He was from a small school, but he was really productive. And their offensive line last year, Bakhtiari got hurt. But I think that if he stays healthy, that their offensive line is going to be really good. And if you give Love time with not a star, but good enough weapons. And the biggest thing is their run game. I mean, they have the dual-headed. They have the Thunder and A.J. Dillon. He can run up the middle, or he can pound people down entire first halves. Um, just boom, 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 bully them, beat them down, and then at the end of the game, they bring out the fresh Aaron Jones, juking people out of their shoes. And I really like their defense. I mean, they have one of the best corners in the entire NFL. And, Rashawn Gary's gotten better every single year. Their defensive line, I wouldn't say it's great, but I think they put so much talent on the defensive line, or on the defense. They've taken a first rounder like 7 out of the past 10 years on defense. So I think that the defense is going to take a step up this year and kind of play to where their talent's going to be. Like you said, this division is extremely competitive, so I'm really excited to see if Jordan, really it does come down to, is Jordan Love going to be good enough? And
I just want to
that
know
he
what's
will be.
wrong with them, because I don't think Rodgers went from being an MVP 2 years in a row to just being absolutely horrendous. I think that has to
Bakhtiari,
reflect more on the team.
yeah, but I think it was a ton of things. Bakhtiari got hurt, Watson was hurt, Rodgers is a
Devontae was
diva.
gone.
Devontae was gone. Rodgers is a diva, which I think that Devontae left. Like, supposedly him and Aaron Rodgers were like all real good buddies, but he left for a reason. I know he wanted to go to the Raiders because it's his hometown or whatever.
Well, he
But
wanted
I
to
think
go and play with Carr. I mean, now he's got to
right,
be pissed off because Carr is gone. But we can touch
right. But
on
that's what
that
I'm
at a
saying.
different time.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, he left for a reason. I don't think that I think Aaron Rodgers, ever since Jordan Love got there, the first 2 years he was MVP. But last year he started not playing well, and I think that he just was like, "Ugh, whatever." That's how he
Yeah.
is. He's an asshole. And I think he had turf toe or at least he said he had turf toe or whatever. I don't know. I just think that Rodgers checked out, and I think that when your quarterback checks out, it's really easy for the rest of your team to check out.
And a team that I don't think is going to check out at all just because of how aggressive the coach is Dan Campbell's Lions. I love this Lions team. They are very reflective of how the Tennessee Titans have been the last couple of years, just like smash mouth football, old school football. Dan Campbell is the type of guy to just keep pounding it up the middle. And they added David Montgomery in order to do that. To replace Jamal Williams. And honestly, if there was a player comp, they're pretty similar other than Montgomery being a little bit more shifty. I love the Jahmyr Gibbs pick the more I think about it. He's a little bit undersized, but he can catch the ball great out of the backfield. Super fast. Like, we're not really relying on him to be that guy to pound it up the middle because we have Montgomery for that. But I think that Gibbs is going to be the big play guy there. They're getting back a first-round pick in Jamison Williams. Right now they're talking about his suspension possibly getting limited from 6 to 2 games or just not at all. But either way, they're getting an explosive playmaker there. Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out last year. Jared Goff has been playing great. I think that he's one of those names in the NFL that got a bad rep and got blamed for a lot of the Rams' issues. Even though he still brought them to the Super Bowl 1 year. So Jared Goff does have the potential to be a great quarterback. He's shown it. He's been a solid quarterback since joining the Lions, even in the first couple of years before they added these good pieces. Drafting Aiden Hutchinson last year, great pick, great talent, perfect for their style of play. They do have some issues, with the linebackers. They addressed their secondary concerns by getting Chauncey Gardner, who we talked about earlier. I think that he's going to be great. I think that he's going to be a ball hawk for this defense. I really like the Lions this year. I think that just their style of play is so different than any of the other teams in the NFC right now. So they're going to be unique. They're kind of creating a similar style to the 49ers where after you play them, you get a little bit beat up. If you look last year with the 49ers, most teams lost, actually every team but 2 lost the week after playing the Niners. Similarly with the Lions, every team scored 8 less points the week after they played the Lions. The Lions just have that style where they beat you up and they win battles underneath. Their O-line's good. Their D-line's good. Dan Campbell's a great coach. I expect good things from the Lions this year.
Yeah, and I can't really oppose you on anything you said there. David Montgomery is better than Jamal Williams. He's a better pass catcher and, like you said, more elusive, I would say. Goff, I think, is good enough because he has such great weapons. First off, to me, the first thing, their offensive line is amazing. Sewell, Ragnow, Decker, all very good players. Their entire offensive line is good. Goff has, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's kind of, jump in the slot, stay kind of short routes, run after the catch, peppered with targets. When Williams comes back, they're going to have a guy to stretch the field. I think one of the things with the Lions, I think I'm just, I don't know if everybody does this, but I'm obviously a football nerd. And I get really into the draft. I actually really like the players that they took.
Jack Campbell's a beast.
I just don't like where they took them. So I think I'm just mad at the Lions because I had so much last year I love the Lions. Coming into the offseason I was so excited, but then Jahmyr Gibbs, I love the player. He got taken way too early. Jack Campbell, I love the player. You're taking a linebacker in the teens.
I think Jack Campbell could be the best defensive player from this draft, to be fair.
No, that's what I'm saying. I like him as a player,
I think he's
but
got
it's
that
a
potential.
reach. Right, but just positional value, should you take a linebacker, an off-ball linebacker, or should you take a defensive end in Nolan Smith? Who would you take?
I would take the better player for my team. I mean, especially since they just got Aiden Hutchinson last year, so why not build? And I just mentioned the linebackers were the worst part of their defense, so why not?
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. The linebackers are the worst part.
They address needs. I mean, if you reach, is it really reaching if you get the right talent? I mean, do you remember when?
Yes, taking a running back with the 12th pick is reach.
Well, no, that was reaching.
Who got drafted? J.J. Watt?
Yeah, when T.J. Watt got drafted.
T.J. Watt got drafted at the end of the first round.
I know, but people were like, people thought that was a reach, and he ended up being one of the best defensive players of the last decade. So
yeah, and he's an edge
I think
rusher,
Jack Campbell has
valuable position.
I think Jack Campbell has that upside. I think Jack Campbell's going to run the shit out of people.
No, I think I could easily see a world where he gets 100 tackles. I'm just saying, to me, the trenches are the biggest part of the team. That's where you should address early on, and your skill position players like receiver, stuff like that. Like I said, I think, like I said, I'm just a little bit of a nerd, and I like every play. I like Gibbs. I didn't like where he got drafted. I like Campbell. I didn't like where he got drafted. I like Laporta. I thought it was a bit of a reach with Michael Mayer there. And I like Brian Branch as well. That actually, I think, was their best pick of the draft.
Yeah, that was a great pick.
So I think by the time the season comes around, I'm going to forget as much draft value, and it's going to just look at the actual roster, which is fantastic. But like I said, I think they're going to be really, really good. Like I said, I think that I think right now I'm still a little mad at them because they could have had, I just think a running back and a linebacker when you have two top 20 picks is just not what you want. Like, how many linebackers are that foundational? You look at the Eagles; they were the best defense in the league last year. Technically our best linebacker was T.J. Edwards. They're just not that important.
I mean, I think that the running back was definitely a reach, but if Jack Campbell can be what I see from his player profile, especially in a division that's going to run the ball a lot. It's not like this division has much passing ability with limited quarterbacks like, Jordan Love. And now the Vikings don't have Thielen, and Justin Fields is still growing, and he's going to be a guy that runs a lot himself. I think to get like a dominant run stopper in the second level, I think that's going to be great for them. We only have a couple minutes left in this show, so we're going to run down the next couple segments real quick. We got the 49ers in this one. I mean, you can't really talk to extent about. Do you think it's going to be Purdy, or do you think it's going to be Trey Lance?
Yeah, I mean, really it comes down to the injury timeline. I think that Trey Lance, I don't think Purdy's going to be back in time, so I think Trey Lance is going to get a shot. It's going to be funny to see when Purdy is ready because the Niners are such a good team. Let's just say Purdy comes back week 8, they'll probably be 6-2. So do they go back to the guy who they probably trust a little bit more, or do they stick with the guy who's winning them games? It's going to be really exciting.
Well, if Lance is what he was drafted to be, then no way in hell
They
Purdy's
can't, right?
Also, my take on Purdy, I think a big reason for his efficiency was just that no one had tape on him, not even in college. So I doubt that he's going to be that good going forward. I personally am kind of out on the Niners, but we'll talk about that a little bit more when we do like the in-depth division breakdowns later on. Next topic will be the impact of the rookies in the NFC South. Now, this is something that I did want to talk about a little bit more, but if you want to see our take on Bijan Robinson, go check out episode 1 where we did our hot takes. We both thought that Bijan, I said that he's going to lead the league in rushing yards. Justin said that he's going to lead the league in scrimmage yards. So both of us really high on Bijan. But as for now, just to touch on Bryce Young, I think he's a fantastic player. Other than his height, there's really nothing that you can knock him on. And I really, really like this Panthers team. The more I think about it, this NFC South is actually going to have some of the most fun to watch games other than the Bucs, because I really like what the Falcons did. I like their offense a lot. Their defense is still pretty shitty, so they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. But as far as the Panthers go, they have so many former first-round picks on that defense. They have Derek Brown from Auburn, who I really liked. They have Brian Burns, phenomenal player. I know you like Burns as well. CJ Henderson from Florida, he's great. J.C. Horn, one of my favorite corners in the league, from South Carolina. Last year, their first-round pick really went under the radar because they didn't have much QB play, so there was not really any shine on the offensive line. But Akeem Ekwonu, he's a freak talent.
Stud.
I think that this year he's going to be talked about a lot more, especially with Bryce Young there. They brought in some vets to help out with the offense, even though they lost DJ Moore. They still have Terrace Marshall there. They brought in Adam Thielen. They brought in DJ Chark. They brought in, on the other side of the ball, they brought in Gruger Hill and Von Bell. I really like what they did. I think that they're a very young team. They're an explosive team. Personally, if I was a GM or a coach, I would be so happy to get this team. And I think that they're only a few pieces away, honestly, from being a contender. I don't think they are this year, but I think that they shock a lot of people. I can see them definitely beating their win total of 6.5 games. I like that a lot, actually. I really like that over, especially in a weak division.
Yeah, well, I was looking for my DJ Moore jersey today. I think I left it. Somewhere, but I've always DJ Moore is one of my favorite players in the league. I've always been a Panthers guy. Even last year, I really liked the Panthers. I really wish they didn't trade DJ Moore because I think Young's going to struggle this year. He's a rookie and he doesn't have a true number 1 receiver. And to me, it's not just that he doesn't have a true number 1. Like Mingo, I think is going to take time. The rookie Chark gets injured every other time he steps on the field. Adam Thielen, how old is he now? We've seen him be on the decline these past few years.
Sanders was an addition.
I like Sanders. So I love their offensive line, and I think that their run game is going to be pretty good. I like Sanders. I like Chuba Hubbard. I love the defense. I think that if they didn't get rid of DJ Moore, quite honestly, me personally, I wouldn't be Saints runaway with the division because I think their defense is phenomenal. Like you said, Brown, Burns, Horn, C.J. Henderson, Jeremy Chin, like their defense is awesome. I've always been a really big Panthers guy. I really don't like that they traded DJ Moore. I think that it's going to bring their offense back for a guy who I like Young, but a rookie quarterback who's going to have really no options that I see being reliable. I think that that's the main reason I think that they're going to struggle.
I like Moore. I mean, I wouldn't say that he's like a world beater that he's going to change that offense that much. I think maybe it could end up being a good thing for Young to not have to focus in on a true number 1 receiver. because he can just spread the ball out and actually take the open guy instead of having to force it in the tight windows sometimes just to get it to DJ Moore. I definitely think Thielen is going to be a really underrated signing. I know he's not as talented as he used to be, but talk about a reliable guy that can get open still. I think that Thielen's going to be good. I like Mingo a lot. I think that Mingo could do well on the outside. Terrace Marshall showed in games last year that he has potential. And I don't see them trying to compete this year, so there's no reason why they would have kept more. Where next year in the draft or next year in free agency, they can get a wide receiver one. I think.
Well, they traded their first round pick.
Yeah.
So yeah, they don't have a first round pick next year, so I guess they could sign someone hypothetically. I just think that
or a second
yeah, exactly. So instead of throwing tight window passes to someone who I know you and I disagree on how good DJ Moore is, I think he's a true number one receiver.
I do too, but I mean, you still like.
Well, would you rather throw a tight window to DJ Moore or to a 35-year-old Adam Thielen or to a rookie Jonathan Mingo?
Well, I'm just saying it'll take the pressure off of him. Sometimes when you come in and you're told like, oh, this is the guy, you have to give him the ball. That puts a little bit more pressure in your head.
See, I think it's the complete opposite. I rather, instead of taking a 5-step drop and looking around and no one's open, or there's no one who I can say, at least like when no one's open, at least you could throw it up to a guy who's talented. When he steps back and no one's open, what's he going to do? He's going to have to throw it in the dirt. You know what I mean? I just don't think that anyone is going to be consistently like Thielen. I think like he wasn't in an offense where he was really the third option, and by the end of the year, he was the fourth option because KJ Osborne really stepped up. Like he was just not all that.
Marshall's probably going to be the X receiver.
Yeah, I could see Marshall taking a step forward, but like
I don't think it'll be great.
Right. I'm just saying I personally think for a rookie, if they're in a bad situation, they want to have somebody to throw it up to that they can trust. You know, I think that might just be a philosophy difference we have.
Yeah. And to go from talking about quarterbacks to ranking our top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC. We'll just go through them quickly because we literally talked about every single one of them this year and this episode. And we've literally also talked about what we like about what they got. I'll go from 5 to 1 this time. I'll count down, and I think number 5 might surprise a lot of people because Matthew Stafford's in this division, because Kyler Murray is, and I could talk about the Cardinals another day. I think if Kyler Murray comes back, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in that division. But right now, as of right now, the top 5 healthy quarterbacks at 5, I actually have Jared Goff. Talk to extent about the Lions. I think statistically he's going to have probably his best season yet. At 4, I'll have Derek Carr. At 3, Justin Fields, with the potential to move up to 2, but I just think that the weapons, getting Brandon Cooks and returning back to a more conservative play style, is going to make number 2 Dak Prescott, and number 1 Jalen Hurts. I mean, what he did in the Super Bowl was undeniable. I thought that he looked like a star, combining his passing ability with his rushing talent, with all the talent around him. I highly doubt that he's not the number 1 quarterback in this conference. So, yeah, we got Goff, Carr, Fields, Dak, Hurts.
Yeah, so actually our top 3 are exactly the same. Hurts, I think he proved all the doubters wrong on that playoff run. Dak, you and I have a respect for Dak. I think this year that Cooks is really going to help him out. Losing Amari was a really big deal last year. Fields, I think, is extremely talented, and I think he's going to take that step forward with DJ Moore. And then actually this one I think is going to really surprise you. I actually have Stafford. If he's actually truly healthy, I think that, I mean, he's been a stud every single year he's been in the league when he's actually been healthy. And at 5, I was really torn, honestly, between Cousins and Carr. I'm going to go with Carr because I think that Carr's just had a little bit more adversity. He did have Devontae Adams, but I think that Cousins – like when Cousins was on the Skins, he was one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league. I actually really support. I loved him. I had him in our. Well, I traded him a couple years ago, but I had him in our dynasty league. Like when Carr was struggling last year, he had Adams, but it's not like Cousins doesn't have Jefferson, who is either the best or second best receiver in the league.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about this year too, and if Olave takes that step, Carr can be that guy. And also with the Stafford thing, you saw the other day I put like $120 on the over on the Rams. I think we need an entire episode to talk about the NFC West because honestly, I see the 49ers taking a big step back, and we haven't even talked about that at all in this episode, even though we're breaking down the NFC. But the Rams can return to form. I don't necessarily believe in Seattle that much. I don't know. It's a crazy freaking division. That division is nuts. The Rams win total right now is ridiculous. It's 6.5. They could have 10. They could bounce back to their Super Bowl level, honestly, but I don't think that they'll make it. But if Stafford is healthy the whole season and plays well, they still have all the pieces. Really, on the defensive side, they only lost Von Miller, who was barely with them that year. They lost Leonard Floyd and Jalen Ramsey, all three huge impact players, but the rest of their roster is pretty similar. So I do actually like that Stafford pick at 4. I
Yeah, I
don't think
think that
it's
their defense.
horrible.
I think their offense is still going to be good. I'm just not convinced on their defense. I think it's Aaron Donald and a bunch of scrubs. And honestly, it's funny that we just, our teams are in the NFC, so there's that. But everyone shits on the NFC, and obviously it is not as good as the AFC because the quarterbacks in the AFC are somewhat like they're just all the studs are over there. But I think that us going for an hour and having so many things that we couldn't fit in, I just think that it shows that, yes, the NFC isn't as good as the AFC, but I think that the NFC still is good. Like, I think football is that's one of the reasons I'm so excited this year. I think football is as competitive as it's been since I can remember. I think that every division is going to be a fight for pretty much everybody.
Yeah, I'm a lot more excited for the conference, honestly, after talking about it today. Because
Yeah.
that, like, I didn't even think about the NFC South, and then now I'm like, oh yeah, I want to see the Panthers play. I want to see the Falcons play. I want to see what they do. But we will do what we did last time, and at the end we will go our division picks. We'll just do a quick rundown since we don't have much time left. I'm actually going to change my NFC North pick. I originally had the Bears written down, but after talking about it and thinking about it, and I completely forgot until we talked about it today that the Lions got Jack Campbell. I am going to go with the Lions running away with the NFC North. NFC South, I have the Saints. NFC West, on paper, it's still June 17th, and there hasn't been many injury reports yet. So I still have the Niners. I can see that changing, though. And then the NFC East, I have the Eagles.
Yeah, East I have the Eagles. West I have the Niners. I think the Seahawks are going to be competitive, but I think that the Niners are inevitable. The South I do have the Saints, and then the North I actually currently have the Packers personally, which I know that might be odd to some people. But that is a division where I think it's so early on, and even though the draft was almost 2 months ago now, there's still so much time to really think about these teams. And as this offseason continues into the season, I'm really excited to see where we end up.
And for our conference picks, I'm just going to say I think it's whoever. I mean, I have the Eagles winning the division, but if the Cowboys win the division, then I think the Cowboys win the conference. I think whoever wins the NFC East ends up winning the conference because they get the home field advantage. And I don't see anyone competing with them. Whereas last year the Niners were up here, like I would say it was Eagles, Niners, Cowboys. Now I think it's Eagles, Cowboys, Niners, everyone else. I don't see it being competitive at all, other than the Cowboys and Eagles as far as the playoffs go.
Yeah, I think that the Eagles are going to win the NFC, but I think that the Cowboys, and I still think that the Niners are extremely talented and that they could also fight for it. But I think the Eagles are going to end up seizing the day.
Well, we shall see. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think this was probably our best episode yet, to be honest. It was really fun. And make sure to check out all of our other videos. We have a Dynasty mock draft coming up. We got a lot of other stuff dropping this week. And comment below what you want our next topic to be. We are still undecided on it because last week we did AFC. This week we did NFC. Maybe we'll do a fantasy podcast next, but we'll catch y'all later. Make sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications.